Hello, everyone, and here is another kind of like a retro review of one of the toys in my collection, and this is Asuka Langley Soryu from the anime franchise Neon Genesis Evangelion. Now, I believe this figure, well, maybe it was released 2006, 2007. My memory is a little bit joggy on this one, but this is like one of the, I would say, one of the very first ones that I've acquired. Uh, and it takes me back, because like Evangelion, I think when it was first showing like 93, 94, I was also in high school, and I think it was one of the very first serious kind of animes that I really got into, because just because I was like really into like the mecha stuff. Of course, like Evangelion is deeper than that, right? And in terms of like the stories, but yeah, it made a tremendous impact on me as a teenager. And sort of like fueled my passion for like anime. And yeah, so Asuka is one of the first ones that I've acquired. And like I said, this is now very dated. This is like the first version that they came out with. Now I believe they've also come out with newer versions of Asuka, especially with the Evangelion rebuilds. Um, there's, I think, the version where she is in the second version plug suit, the one where she's like taped up and all that. There's the normal kind of like plug suit, and I think there's like a school uniform one, but this is like the OG. I think there might have been other versions of this that was released where she is like in a yellow dress and in a uniform, like in a school uniform. I just don't remember. Just like I said, that there might be like photos online floating around that, but my memory is of course very flimsy. Given that I've this has been so long ago, and you can just see the age of this. First, it's just like the photo at front, which is like a action figure photo. And of course, with Medicom, they always list the creative staff here at the back. There's nothing, just like the logo here. Real action heroes. Um, then if you open this, see, it has yellowed so much because I've had this for so long. The art is okay, but the plastic transparent one has yellowed. Um, uh, can't remember whether I got this already kind of yellowish or maybe it yellowed out in time from exposure. But anyway, let's get her out of the box. And again, I think I mentioned this before. With Medicom stuff, you don't really get a lot of accessories, especially from the early stuff. Fairly basic. In fact, the way that she's just stored in box here is almost kind of like the same sort of like almost kind of like the same pose, but this is like her Asuka kind of pose, right? The Antabaka pose. That's what I call it. So anyway, yeah, this has really yellowed out in time, but the colors are still vibrant on her. I buy it. She's a little bit dusty. Like I said, when I was putting them on storage, um, I was I was I was in a rush because I was like moving from one place to another, and I didn't have a lot of time. I was displaying them in a detolf cabinet, um, but essentially, um, months and I guess years of like dust accumulated. Um, but essentially, the thing about Medicom stuff, the early body. So this one really goes the joint. Yeah, it's like a double jointed. It's not on a ball joint. It's a double jointed one. And the shoulder articulation. Yeah, there is some shoulder articulation. There's some torso articulation here. Feel the joints. And there's some hip articulation. And also the knees are double jointed. Now the thing about these old ones, these older versions, is that like these caps, like kind of like the knee pads. They're not part of the suit. They're kind of like glued onto it, as opposed to like the newer ones where it's now integrated with the suit, which is the more, I think, correct version. If there's such a thing as a correct version, including this, right? Like the shoulder pads, they look like pauldrons. And what I don't like about this is that, you know, she looks like she's like in armor when you pose her. If you put her arms close to that, like this just floats. I think as opposed to like the newer ones, because this is supposed to be kind of like a little bit more seamless, you know, because it's supposed to be like a tighter bodysuit. Like in this photo, it just looks like one unit, but in here, it's floating, right? Like you need to push it through or like pose her in such a way um, that her arm would be like jutting out. And I just find that kind of odd. But then again, you know, like it. I think also the newer versions have addressed the gaps in the suit. I see that sort of shoulder guard, kind of like a side guard. They've addressed these issues, even sort of like the breastplate. This is floating as opposed to being in one unit, um, of a bodysuit. But I guess, um, back in the day, either for lack of material or design specs, like I said, this is like an older figure that's more than 15 years old. Back in the day, this was as good as it gets. You know, and which just shows you how much like the toy production um, leaps and bounds, especially with some of the third party stuff, even look better than or as good as some of like the Hot Toy stuff. And then the stripes here are again I guess they're glued in or seamed in, um, you know, and the suit is kind of like almost latexy, right? It shows like I guess some of these ones would eventually degrade. I don't know if I could focus that a little bit, right? It just shows you like with age, it's just age, right? Like anything that you own would eventually degrade. But this is like a very nice head sculpt. Again, the thing about Medicom toys is that they really make good anime figures. So this one, even as dated as it is, it still looks nice and still very faithful to the original anime. All right. I mean, there's some shading, like highlights in her auburn blonde-ish hair. Um, considering that this figure is like almost 20 years old, it held up pretty nice. You know, I'm always kind of like afraid that a lot of these things would just degrade in time, and they do. Um, you know, but for whatever it's worth, I guess it's nice, right? Like you see I guess kind of like a backpack here. It says like Unit 2 at the back. Let me see if I can get some light. All right. And I guess the nice thing about it is that it's not it didn't degrade at all, like the quality of the material. It's still fairly nice overall. So I'm quite happy with that. And of course, it goes with pair of extra hands here, kind of like an open one and semi-closed one. That's it. That's all you get really, and then a stand. But again, like I said, not a bad fig for something that was released in 2006, 2007. And yeah, that's it. And hope you enjoyed this.